Okay, shall we start? This is the second day's last session about economics. I'm chair of this session. My name is Yukinobu Kitamura, Hitotsubashi University. And we have three speakers this session. So each had about 20 minutes, and we had 30 minutes joint discussion. Is that all right? Okay, shall we start, Bruno? Dallago, could you start in 20 minutes? Yeah, please.
Okay, so the topic is, my topic is on the transformation that is going on in the European Union under the pressure of the economic and political complexity that the pandemic has been created. I will explain you in which, in sense and for how the situation in the European Union is extremely complex, but also promising a great step forward. Not leap forward, step forward, to be precise. So I will speak of two different issues. An introduction that highlights how the health shock within the European Union has been asymmetric, very different from one country to the other, which may be problematic for the cohesion of the European Union. And the other aspect are the asymmetric economic and financial consequences that this fact is having. Just to make clear the situation, as you see, the European Union is represented by the green line. This represents the number of infections in different parts of the world per million inhabitants. So these data are comparable. And as you see, the European Union is not in the worst situation. Nothing which can be compared to South America and North America, in spite of the fact that earlier this year, the situation was the worst in the world, as you see on the left side of this chart. In spite of this, obviously, there are difficult consequences, and the most relevant is this one. The consequences of the pandemic, of the infections, in health terms, we are speaking of active infections per million of inhabitants, is extremely different from one country to the other. Germany is among these countries the best off. The green line is on the bottom and continues to be relatively good also in this moment. Italy was the most heavily hit country at the very beginning. In March, April this year, Italy is represented by the red line, but then the measures taken by the government and the behavior of most people who really accepted and respected the lockdown were able to solve during the summer, at least, the situation. Now we are having a second wave, which probably reached its top, is starting to decrease. So overall, Italy is well off. But if you look the situation of Spain and also Belgium, the Netherlands, and France are very heavy, and they continue to be extremely heavy also now. This opens the question of how can the European Union deal with these very important differences from one country to the other, taking into account the real big problem of the European Union, that we do not have one common government, we do not even have common resources to counteract the negative effects of the pandemic. Even worse, if you look at this map of the European Union, you can see where the dark spots are. We have dark spots and much lighter spots. The white areas obviously are countries outside the European Union, including Great Britain, which is effectively out. But you see that the worst parts of the pandemic concentrate in Spain, which is totally red. In certain parts in Poland, I would say, is quite heavy, Romania and Bulgaria, and in Croatia and certain parts of Italy. Elsewhere is less serious. Now, the problem is much worse. Why? Because this map could be also taken to represent quite well the stress over public finances of member countries. Where the red is the deepest, the situation of public finances is the worst. So these countries don't have own financial resources to counteract the negative effects, negative economic effects, and the costs, the health costs to deal with the infection. Here, this chart gives a picture of the expected recession that we will have this year, according to the Financial Times forecasts, which were are very recent, are mid-October, referred to mid-October. As you see, the expectation go from nearly no impact in Lithuania, but still rather low in Ireland, Finland, even the Netherlands, not particularly high in Germany, but very heavy in countries like Spain, France, and Italy, which, together with Germany, are 3 of the 4 largest countries of the European Union. So, a substantial part of the population of the European Union is hardly hit not only by the pandemic, but by a very deep recession that can be even higher than 10%. We have to see what will happen with the second infection that we are living through. And this, no, it's okay. So overall, the forecasts, not taking into account policies for the future, these are from the European Central Bank, are pretty gloomy. The forecasts are for the next years, the growth of the economy will restart, but we will be and remain for years far from the modest trend, growth trend that we had in the past. So the situation is economically quite serious. Once again, forecasts for the large countries, the 4 largest countries, which account for well above the 50% of the population in the Union, are not particularly good. The drop will be much higher than the expected drop, than the recovery that hopefully will start next year. The consequences for inflation, for employment, are serious, in spite of the fact that all countries try to oblige companies to keep their employees and basically paying from the state budget, from public budgets and loans, the salaries and wages of these people, in order not to charge companies with additional costs. Inflation is basically negative, so we are in deflation now. So this is not a problem. This open, while growing unemployment and the threat of booming unemployment next year requires some kind of active policy, fiscal policies in this situation. There is absolutely no danger of inflation around Europe. Further, another difficulty is that small companies are in a much worse situation than big companies. They find difficult to adapt, and many of them are really or virtually bankrupt. And there are many different consequences for different economic branches. Predictably, here you see an assessment of the negative consequences. The worst situation is obviously in tourism. All the countries are locking down, for instance, the winter season for skiing, which in the Alps is absolutely fundamental and provides a substantial part of regional and local GDP, while obviously predictably the health system and some other branches could even gain from the adaptation to the pandemic and what will come in the next months and years. So even this is making the situation a little bit more complex. On top of this, there are extremely negative consequences that we can expect for public finances. Very heavy in the countries which are hit hardest by the pandemic and by the recession, and which have already high public debts like Spain and Italy, but also France is not in a particularly good and Belgium are not in a particularly good financial fiscal situation for the high public debt. So this is increasing dramatically. Okay, let's leave this out. Is creating a really serious and potentially dangerous situation in the European Union, which actually requires a new solution for the European Union. And let me represent the issue, the real dilemma we are, or better, trilemma, where the European Union is finding itself now. Monetary orthodoxy was abandoned in 2012 with a famous statement of whatever it takes by the President of the European Central Bank. And since then, monetary policies became expansionary, and this year they became, I would say, hyper-expansionary. Fiscal orthodoxy, balanced budgets, and so on, dominated until January this year. Even if during the last years, since 2014, the orthodoxy was a little bit softened, but it didn't change for good and clearly. It is changing now. There was a dramatic change in fiscal policies by the European Union through this year, and they are accelerating continuously. Why? Because the European Union understood that in this trilemma, the most dangerous apex is what is on the top, the integrity of the European and monetary union. The data which I showed you and the little I could tell you highlight that the integrity of the European Union, and in particular of the euro area, is really at risk. If nothing will be done, some countries will probably have simply to leave the common currency, return to national currencies, depreciate dramatically their currencies and try to adapt, and run anyway huge public debts with a predictably very nasty reaction by countries. This cannot be tolerated for economic reasons. Europe is very highly integrated, both in trade, but also in production, and in financial sense, and in production. What happened? Let me see. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So let me reach basically the last chapter of my presentation. What is the European Union doing? Let me distinguish between monetary and fiscal policies taken by the European Union and the role of national policies. Look at this chart, which I think summarizes what should be said about about monetary policies. This chart represents the spread of interest rates on long-term state bonds, 10 years with 10 years maturity, of 4 countries, the countries in the most critical financial situation, Spain, Greece, Italy, and Portugal, over the long-term interest rates on comparable bonds in Germany. So how much do these countries have to pay more in interest rates to finance their public debts compared to what Germany does? As you see, until COVID-19 outbreak took place, the first vertical dotted line in black, interest rates were either stagnating or decreasing, and the situation appeared to be pretty well under control thanks to the ECB policies. As soon as the infection broke out, interest rates increased dramatically, particularly so in Greece, but also in Italy. Now I see a message in Japanese. Okay. Then the European Union introduced the so-called PEPP program, which means it's an extraordinary program to fight the pandemic emergency purchase program, whereby the European Central Bank cancelled all the rules on its purchase of bonds sold by national governments, not directly, but through the secondary market, through open market operations, basically cooperating with commercial banks, which are buying bonds and selling them to the European Central Bank. The intervention, I think it was 750 billion euros and increased further in later months. And the effect was extremely positive. And basically, we went down to the situation that we had before the pandemic. Very active monetary policies with no limits, as a matter of fact. And as a matter of fact, the European Central Bank is flooding the market with monetary financing above what is strictly needed to finance the deficits which are foreseen for this year, is represented in darker orange, and next year in lighter orange, through different programs, as you see. I will not enter into details of this. So very expansionary fiscal policies, and now we enter, very expansionary monetary policy, but here now we enter into fiscal policies. This chart highlights the situation of the different countries. On the horizontal axis, there is the forecast concerning growth for the next year. So to the left, Spain is foreseen to have a decrease of its GDP by 14%. As you see, there is no clear relation with what is on the vertical axis, that is to say the grants and the guarantees that the country obtained for the European Union under different recovery tools. In particular, weaker countries which are less developed, tend to obtain more. So if you see on the top, we have typically Central and Eastern European countries, and then the countries like Portugal, which are meeting more difficulties in financing their situation. But for instance, Sweden and Germany, Denmark, Belgium, even France or even Italy, which have a rather serious decrease in the growth forecast, don't receive a particularly high share of the common health. So it's like a kind of redistribution together with support to fight the pandemic. What is interesting here is to see the situation of Hungary and Poland, HU for Hungary and PL for Poland, which are among the countries which are strongly supported by this fund. The question is, why are they blocking the progress? Now, let me
wrap up your talk in 2 minutes. Could you wrap up your talk in 2 minutes?
I reached the conclusion, not showing all this because I already told you. The funds are allocated so to guarantee at least a growth rate of more than 4% by 2014 to the countries in greater need, and just 1% to the others which are better off. So it's an attempt to go towards reunifying the European Union, trying to decrease the dramatically divergent trends that we are seeing now. And substances, the resources are enormous. As you see, the recovery funds amount to 4 to 7% of gross national income of most non-Euro countries, a little bit less for the Euro countries, but well above 10% for countries like Croatia and Bulgaria, which are in a particularly difficult situation. On top of this, these countries can take nearly 7% of loans from other sources. Now, let me show you this chart, because this shows what member countries are doing. These are all the fiscal measures that they are implemented compared to the GDP. As you see, Italy, under different headings, is pouring nearly 50%, resources amount to nearly 50% of this GDP. Other countries less, but there is a group of countries, including Germany, which are pulling an enormous amount of resources to try to recover the situation. Now, let me conclude by saying this. This clearly shows that there is something really new going on in the European Union. No budget constraints. The European Union, together with IMF, has been telling the countries, spend as much as you can. Don't pay attention to public debts. That will be something that we will solve if the economy starts to grow. We are supporting you. We will use common resources for the first time. The European Union will go to the market, hopefully so, if Hungary and Poland agree, and selling European bonds. And will use the revenue not only to activate loans with a very low interest rate to countries, but also to give countries grants that countries don't have to pay back. And this will be supported by the strongest countries. So we are seeing for the first time a truly cooperative European Union. Whether this will work will largely depend on what Hungary and Poland will decide to do, because they have veto power and they announced they will vote against this scheme. Then I'll leave to the questions, if you are interested in answering, what is the European Union thinking of doing to overcome the veto power of these two countries. So I stop here.
Thank you. Shall we accept Q&A later on after 3 presentation? We had about 30 minutes, so but let's start the Olga next, and then move to the Steve, and then we could discuss each other. Okay, so Olga, please.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see you all. Yeah, let me open my presentation. Just a moment. Just a moment. So I have about 10 or 15 minutes, I think, yeah?
Yes, maybe maximum 20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so with basically this presentation, I made my my speech in Kyoto in March, actually. I didn't have a chance to present the same in March in Tokyo, but thank you for invitation today. I can share with you my thoughts about what we shall do after pandemic, and what is new world order, and what will change in future, because all of us, of course, are in a difficult situation right now, but we look forward. Yeah, we look to the brighter future. Here in Russia, we have a serious problem with this pandemic, but we still continue to work, yeah, to do what we can do in the present circumstances. My topic is about professional associations. All of us are specialists, professionals in different spheres, in different fields, and I believe in our possibility to contribute to the formating of a new world order. Yes, if you think about the ways how can we influence the world, influence the future, you of course agree with me that nobody listens to individual actors, and it's the biggest reason why we try to join, why we try to make our efforts together. So professional societies and associations exist in many countries, and in Russia also, and of course they are these associations, these organizations, NGOs are important actors of civil society in the country. If we speak about professionals, we can divide our unions, our associations into two parts. Some professionals are joining by industries, for example, association of IT workers, or IT or telecom industry, or something like this. And also, I think we must pay attention to another type of organization when managers and researchers are joining to develop certain functions of management in business, in economy, to understand deeply the processes which are maybe similar in different companies and different businesses, and to contribute to some social goal, some social purpose in economic development. Yeah. In Russia, we of course have different associations and unions, and the most developed and old association is the Chamber of Commerce, of course, which existed, I believe, maybe even in Soviet times. But in the 90s, after the collapse of Soviet Union, many other independent associations appeared, but some of them needed in the beginning the resources of the government. For example, Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs was sponsored by Russian government, and it still exists. It's it can make its contribution to influence business to make it more socially responsible. Yeah, for example, they have a bank, they have a database, the database of non-financial reports of companies, CSR reports, sustainability development reports. So they concentrate this information and make research on that and develop this experience among Russian companies. Also, big business unites together in some associations like Business Russia, Delovaya Россия, means it actually includes all big businesses like Gazprom, like famous Russian companies. And also we have other unions which unites smaller companies for small business and medium enterprises. And they share not only opinions, but experience and teach each other, educate business. And they try to lobby the interest of business in government, and our parliament. To make better conditions for business to develop. And all mentioned above non-commercial organizations, all unions, professional associations are included in the third sector of economy. It's NGO or NPO, non-governmental and non-profit organizations in Russia. I think this figure shows how many organizations like this we have now in Russia. And among them, this is part, among them we have about more than 7,000 different professional associations. And for the last 2 years, I am engaged personally, in the activity of Russian Business Ethics Network, the NGO, on the example of which I would like to tell you how we can influence the world, influence the next new world order. So our RBN, Russian Business Ethics Network, is a part of, is a Russian chapter of European Business Ethics Network. And we promote fair business, high standards of ethics in business, and corporate social responsibility is what we do. I like very much the ideas of Professor Mizabata about the market quality. And I think that professional associations contribute to the quality of deals, of what we do in business. So business becomes more sophisticated and more ethical if we can influence the business by our tools, by sharing best practices, and by benchmarking between different businesses in different industries. As I mentioned before, we consider it to be a civil society development contribution. So, okay, I will end this comment here. So on national level, and even maybe international level, what we face now, what problems do we face now all over the world? Of course, it's different disease, especially pandemic, COVID-19. But you know, this pandemic just showed how weak and how non-prepared the whole world was before this disease came to us. So we of course, even in 20th century, we recognized, every country recognized that it's very dangerous that we have an epidemic, but I don't know, it's sort of like came from the heaven to us to show us that we really have to be attentive to this sphere of life, to the health and to wellness and disease protection. Of course, world economic crisis made it worse, the situation with poverty in different countries and in Russia, including Russia, with unemployment and corruption, unfortunately. For Russia, corruption was always the problem, and I think, I mean, one of the directions of activity of our association is to fight corruption in business. And of course, we see ecological problems. Maybe you know that now the waste number one in the ocean is maybe not even plastic, but this hydrogen masks, which are threw away and not correctly, not recycled, unfortunately, in most countries of the world, and they can be found now in ocean, in the seas and ocean. So next several slides, I will let you know what we do in our association as an example of our contribution to the institutional development of economics and of economy in Russia. We were founded in this year, in 2016, even a little bit earlier, but the real activity started even, well, several years ago. Yeah, we are registered in St. Petersburg, but our members are mostly from Moscow and also from St. Petersburg and from regions of Russia. So we are a national-wide organization. I work in this organization as a deputy director, and we actually, during this year, despite the pandemic problems, we really made a lot. I mean, we developed very, very fast, actually. In the beginning, when I came to Tokyo and Kyoto in March, I made this presentation, and on my slide, it was only 80 members. Yeah. 80 members. But now we are proud to say that soon, maybe before the end of this year, we will be 130, but now we 126. And our uniqueness of our association is that we provide the possibility to meet for two kinds of members: the academia and managers, practitioners from Russian business. We have some educational programs, and also we develop ourselves, our members write case studies in the sphere of business ethics, and about corporate social responsibility, and about the function of compliance in Russian business. You know, compliance came to Russia as a function of management not many years ago. I mean, quite recently. And I think the influence, I mean, the reason, the factor which made it possible for Russia was the pressure from USA. You know that many Russian big businesses are monitored by USA entities, and they are under sanctions, under economic sanctions. And Russian management made an answer, the reply, I mean, to the answer to this pressure, and we developed compliance functions in our organizations and business in order to mitigate these risks which we have from outside, from USA, for example, economic sanctions, and not only them. Of course, compliance function is about many risks which organizations have inside. For example, the human rights protection is also under the control of this economic of this compliance subsidiary. How is it correct to say? Compliance department of big companies which we have. what we do in our RBN, in our association, Russian Business Ethics Network. We issue newsletters. We send them to all our members and volunteers. We arranged a lot of events already. Before the pandemic, they were offline, but now during this year, we arranged about 15 online meetings, which attracted a lot of attention from business and researchers, more from business actually. Now maybe 40% of our members are researchers and academia, and about 60% and growing part of our association is business actually. Business managers from real business in Russia, in different industries. So we write case studies, including me. I wrote several, I would say. We provide online trainings for managers, and for example, my university is cooperating with RBN and trying to offer a special program to arrange compliance function in companies. We didn't start the learning yet, but we are developing the program. So later I will speak more about certifications, and we develop, it's our innovation actually, what we provide on Russian market is business ethics audit. So to measure how ethical the behavior of a company is actually. So we develop a special method to check audit. So this year we plan to have the EBAN, the European Business Ethics Network Network conference, big conference, European level conference in my city in St. Petersburg, Russia. But it was unfortunately cancelled. I mean, it was moved to the next year. So we hope if the pandemic situation will be okay, and if our guests will have an opportunity to come to St. Petersburg, we hope to have this conference in June of 2021. And it will be the main topic of the conference will be about self-regulations of on markets actually, and this self-regulations includes ethical issues of markets. So we promote the opportunity for business to decide itself, between itself in different industries, what is right and what is wrong to do on each industry, in each situation, and in each under special conditions of some industries and markets. So self-regulation is our focus for the conference. And we cooperate with universities, and we have a lot of students as volunteers. So we do a good job, I think. So it's about the title. I'm sorry. It's about our newsletter actually. What we do. We had a plan to make this review of magazines. It was made some time ago, but we didn't have resources to continue this year. But we hope to attract maybe volunteers to make these reviews of this cool and beautiful journals. But we write columns, you know, in this year, during 2020, we wrote, and me personally, I wrote about 7 columns or something. I'm now a blogger, I would say, for about different issues of business ethics actually. And our other members of our RBN also are writing interesting columns. So if you understand Russian, you are welcome to see them openly on our website. So it's about the RBN newsletter. This slide is about our events, our roundtables and conferences. The biggest conference finished last week, actually, and we spoke about compliance and ethics in telecom industry. So we attracted about 16 speakers from different mobile operators, consultants, and from 3 countries, from Uzbekistan, Ukraine, and Russia. And we discussed interesting questions, how to find conflict of interest in companies, how to what is ethical towards the clients of mobile operators, to all of us who have our mobile phones, so etc. And other topics which we had Actually, you know, maybe all of you know, maybe Professor Tanimoto, Kanji Tanimoto sensei. He came to us. I mean, virtually online. He came to us in June, and we had a very nice meeting. I think sharing experience of development of the similar association in Japan and in Russia. Because in Japan from 2011 you have a very beautiful, nice, and cool association, Japan Forum for Business and Japan Forum of Business and Society. So we are making in Russia something like that. I think your forum, Japan Forum for Business and Society, is more about research. I think about theoretical part of this studies. But we in Russia, we concentrate more on business ethics and compliance than on CSR. And the second feature is that we have more managers and real practitioners and corporate members, not only individual members, but we have 4 companies, 3 companies at one university, my university, which is corporate members of us. So we are a little bit different, but we are doing the same thing. I think we are quite successful. And regarding the cooperation with communication and links and cooperation with the state, with government, we had a big and interesting meeting in June with Deputy Head of Federal Anti-Monopoly Service, because a lot of questions, ethical questions, business ethical questions, are in the field of monopoly activity of different monopolies on markets. In Russia, it's a real problem.
Wrap up in your talk in 1 minute, 2
1
minutes.
minute, very good. Very good. I'm sorry to take your time. This is about our certifications. We are in the process of development of these different kinds of certificates, which we are going to offer to Russian market, to Russian professionals in this sphere. I think the mostly developed is the second one. We spent a lot of meetings and discussions to develop this. And the first and the third is only under construction, I would say. So okay, we are going to, we hope to have exams to give these certificates, and our examples, I mean, our ideals, what we would like to do as it's done worldwide, you can see on the slide. So it's these are famous international standards and the certificates, and we are going to develop in Russia something like that, I hope, hopefully. Okay, this is about the exam. This is I'm also responsible in this association I'm responsible for the cooperation with university between RBN and the universities, and we signed an agreement a year ago in November 2019. This is Maxim Starchevoy, who is the founder of our RBN and my boss in RBN, and this is Igor Maximtsov, who is rector of my university. So now I hope they are friends, thanks to me. And you know, this is the place where my university is situated in my beautiful city of St. Petersburg. Let me make a conclusion about the importance of NGOs as a whole of this third sector of economy, and especially the professional associations. We really contribute to development of the market quality and the economic development of our countries to overcome the problems which we all face. The problems like poverty, disease, unemployment, corruption, and different problems. Thank you for your attention. I will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move to the Steve Rosefielde, and you have 20 minutes. Could you start?
Oh, I have no paper to give. I thought I made that clear. Bruno and I did a joint presentation today. Yes. He gave the presentation for me. Right. And on Monday, I'm giving a joint presentation for a different paper.
Okay.
So Olga, you can just continue to talk if you if you like, and Bruno can jump in as well.
Yes. Yeah. Bruno, you can begin with the discussion.
Yeah, sure.
But I heard that your title is the new principles for a better EU. So could you start talk? Anything you'd like to talk?
Sorry, I didn't understand. Who is to speak? Steve or myself?
I don't know, you decide. Steve, do you want to talk or you want to?
We agreed that
I'm totally silent. Bruno, today is your day, Monday's my day.
Okay. So today is your day, Bruno. Could you talk about a better EU? About
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that this is how to say, either a nasty or encouraging message by Steve. Are we going towards a better EU, or did the pandemic show that it's a lost hope and we'd better give up? Now, let me start then to answer what is not required, a question that was not put expressively, but I think it's very interesting to understand what is going on and stress that, as Steve and myself wrote, and Steve wrote also in other papers about the European Union, that we should go towards a more flexible European Union, as a matter of fact, in order to afford all the tensions and the different programs until at least the Union won't have a common government, which certainly won't happen during my life. I want to live many, many years more, but I'm not, I'm convinced that I will not see a full center government, obviously. Some better integration on this on policy making, certainly it will happen. It already is going on now, but not a full government that can reallocate resources. We should start with having a real common budget for that. Now, this is exactly what is going on. The European Union has a powerful central bank, which is is not fully central bank, full lender of last resort, because as I mentioned earlier, it cannot lend directly to governments. It has only to support indirectly governments through open markets. So the central bank has to convince private investors, in particular commercial banks, to buy state bonds, guaranteeing them that then the European how monetary policies works in Italy and in the European Union. And you may suspect, and you're right if you suspect so, that the European Central Bank is putting pressure on commercial banks and promising, for instance, endless loans with negative interest rates, as it is so far, to make not only patriotic, so to speak, for central banks to buy the bonds of their own governments, but also economically convenient. This is how expansionary policies works in the beginning in the European Union, and the pandemic simply brought this approach to a higher quantitative level. It works. It's dangerous, but for becoming dangerous, Europeans should become more optimistic about their own future. The pandemic witnessed a decrease of incomes of people. People are becoming poorer on average. It's difficult to work full time, in particular during the first lockdown. The top priority given by nearly all the government was first health, then the economy. We will have time to deal with the economy. This time, during the second wave, governments are trying to behave a little bit differently. Let's protect health without destroying the economy. So much more selective approach to the lockdown, no nationwide lockdown, but locally based lockdown, regional lockdown, or even by villages. In my region, for instance, they introduced total lockdown for 3 villages, while we are free to move as we prefer. No lockdown during, let's say, working period, but this night the Prime Minister of Italy announced, and in other countries the same is happening, that starting from the 21st of December up to the 6th of January, there will be not total but strong lockdown. We cannot go out of our region, go to other regions, and we cannot, if we are in an area which we call red or orange, that's to say where the situation, the health situation is a little bit more delicate, we cannot even go out of our municipality. And for 2 days, Christmas and the following day, all over Italy, we cannot move from our village or our town. So the idea is, now you are on vacation, stay, and you don't produce anyway, stay home. We will return to move around when we have to go to work. And I think this is a very reasonable approach. It proved to work decently, protecting sufficiently, not enough obviously, but the virus was not consulted and apparently didn't accept the government's decisions, but anyway, keeping the infection under control while avoiding to jeopardize the economic production and the financial situation. But this is not enough. As I said, the European Union started for the first time very important quantitatively financial projects, plans, which for the first time foresee a substantial part, more or less 50% of grants, not loans. So countries will have grants that do not have to repay back, and the possibility to get loans at very low interest rates because they will be obtained using the reputation and the solidity of the European Union. Now, however, this was decided in June. One step that has to be done, that's to say, the European Council, the meeting of the prime ministers of the European governments, have to approve for the European Commission to do so, to act in financial markets in the name of the European Union. You said everybody agreed, all the countries agreed, so no, because the Prime Minister of Hungary, supported by the Prime Minister of Poland, said no, we will veto this step. Further, once the European Council, the national prime ministers, voted for start this recovery fund, or as
well, I think it's disconnected. Bruno, are you with us?
can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear now.
Yeah, but probably.
I'm sorry, is it possible
Sorry, it is.
to stop the Bruno's presentation because
I tried to enter with my mobile, which is to be much more stable. Anyway, let me continue.
Okay.
It might be better to finish Bruno's presentation.
Let me continue. Should I continue?
if it's possible, is it finish to close your presentation? Because Steve's presentation is remaining.
No, I have no presentation, Kumiko.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bruno is giving.
Bruno and I made a joint presentation.
Oh, really? Okay.
Steve
I
said that
understand.
not he's there. Bruno,
I'm going to come in further on Monday.
Right.
No,
Okay. Thank you.
Bruno and I agreed on a division of labor.
okay, anyway, but if you like to say anything more, Bruno, do you want to, or shall we start discussing on general topic today? I think he's trying to connect with his mobile now.
I think we should start discussing, yeah,
Yes,
and
yes,
making some
perhaps,
conclusions. Yeah.
Is that all right? Everyone agree? Shall we start discussing? According to the instruction of the organizer, if you have a question, put it the Q&A session in the bottom of the Zoom files. There is a Q&A part, and you can put your questions. Or maybe if the panelists want to talk, and you can start talk. Okay. Well, to the Olga, I have some questions. That it's associations, professional associations movement. You mentioned later on that you start expanding international network of the professional associations. How it's helped to the creating kind of a new world order or some sort of cooperation with Russia, with the other country on a private sector basis or academic basis or governmental basis, which is the level of cooperations you are talking.
Thank you very much for your question, Kitamura Sensei. What I had in my mind when I was writing my presentation, preparing, is not governmental cooperation. I mean, not cooperation between governments. My idea was that even apart from government, even independently from government, we can make a lot. You know, as professionals in at least two fields, yeah, in research and in cooperation of business between each other. So I don't know what government is doing, you know, it's their business, but all of us as specialists can contribute, can make our
it's kind of voluntary organizations. You don't want to be involved with the government.
Yeah, we at this time not at all. We wouldn't like to be involved. We just invite sometimes some representatives of governmental bodies, and they exchange exchange opinions between the business and us and researchers and etc. But not we would not like to lobby some of new laws and etc. No. Okay. Not at this level, not at this stage.
Oh, Bruno, you're back. Yeah. Did you want to talk, continue, or you like to start the discussion now?
Well, I actually continue to see you, but I don't know why you could not hear me.
We can hear you, but with a strong echo.
Echoing.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, now it's better.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Let me see if I can. Now, can you hear me? Is it better?
Yes.
Okay, let me try to see if I can finish. I turn the video off. Now, I was saying why or what could happen if Hungary in particular, but also Poland, will be consistent in their refusal, in their opposition. Why are they doing so? And why? What could they do? After the recovery fund, also national parliaments have to approve one by one, and this is always an additional risk. But the main reason is that the European Parliament, which is taking a greater role nowadays, pretends that European resources, common resources, are given only to countries which respect the fundamental principles upon which the European Union is based, and in particular, the rule of law. Yeah. Hungary and Poland are under scrutiny by the European Court of Justice because they apparently, according to the accusations, control politically the judiciary and in particular the Constitutional Court. And the large majority of the European Parliament voted that if this is the case, countries which do not respect the rule of law cannot get common funds. For that reason, Hungary, the Prime Minister defines himself proudly as an illiberal Democrat because he accepts elections, but illiberal because he decides without asking other people and less than everybody, the parliament. And he will not give up this because it's efficient and effective, according to him. So there is a clash. But the real reason is that the new long-term 7 years budget of the European Union, which will start on the 1st of January, foresees a substantial decrease of allocations, in particular to Hungary. In the previous cycle, which ends at the end of this month, Hungary obtained transfer from the European Union corresponding to approximately 4.5% of its yearly GDP every year, and Poland not much less. The next 7 years, they will get more or less 2.5% of their GDP in transfers. And in a little bit more than 1 year, there will be elections. So this is the real reason. What can the European Union do? Yesterday, there was a clear statement by basically the large majority of Prime Minister. The president nowadays is Angela Merkel, the Prime Minister of Germany, for 6 months until the 31st of December. And she stated that before her term expires, the recovery fund will be implemented and start. How? Well, the serious alternative is that the European Union is ready to replace a recovery fund under the European Commission, that is to say, as a truly European Union initiative with an inter-country, intergovernmental initiative. Not the 27, but the 25 countries which want the recovery fund will make an agreement and start it as an inter-country initiative. This is good because it can solve the problem and leave Hungary and Poland without any European contribution for the next 7 years. So they will have to go to the market if they want money, and everybody supposes that the markets will punish the two countries. So basically, it is considered, or it is hoped, that this threat will convince the two countries not to block the decision. So this is the good part. The bad part would be that instead of making a fundamental, in a sense, revolutionary from the institutional point of view, step forward in the line that Steve and myself were proposing in this paper, but perhaps even more and faster than we thought, well, it will remain in the old way when difficult but important initiatives are taken. It is national countries which agree. So instead of going forward into coordinated policies under a truly European organ, we will go on with policy brought forward by national governments. And politically speaking, and even more so institutionally speaking, this will be much weaker, obviously. I stop.
Okay. Steve, do you want to add something?
No, this is an extremely complicated subject.
Yeah.
It's difficult to give us a very brief, insightful statement. But Bruno's done a terrific job. It's a complicated subject.
Right. Do you want anyone who has the questions about or can?
Well, and I should say, let me just interject. If people are really interested in the details, I'll fill in the details on Monday.
Okay. So those who wanted to know the details, go on Monday.
That's good. I hope that the snowstorm will be over, but the time and my connection will work well.
Okay. Well, I think we can discuss more, but I think Kumiko wanted me to stop earlier to wrap up this session. And before closing, there will be the Ariyoshi Ogawa, Professor Ariyoshi Ogawa will give us some concluding remarks. And then afterwards, the Kumiko will take over. Ogawa Sensei, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Okay.
Pretty well.
My name is Ariyoshi Ogawa. I'm a former member of Science Council of Japan and a former president of Japan Political Science Association. Many thanks to all the speakers and the audience for joining this long conference in which we're experiencing truly global debates over wars and new world orders. Given so many inspiring talks by distinguished scholars from across the world, I came to a question. World orders of whom, by whom, for whom? After the First World War, David Lloyd George, who was British Prime Minister, wrote in his war memories that the nations slithered into the boiling cauldron of war. In other words, the leader of superpower at that time felt himself so powerless facing a war. Leaders seek credit, but not final responsibility. 100 years later, we now know it's not only male leaders of Western states, but also international organizations, the European Union, subnational regions, non-Western, non-white, female and LGBT actors that shape global orders. At the same time, civil wars and conflicts, financial crises, climate change, and even virus mold people's destinies. Just 3 days ago, a Chinese spacecraft landed on the moon to collect samples. But we're not living in the times of Sputnik shock. We are living in political and economic complexities, as we discussed in today's sessions. It never be decided who owns world orders. What is vital, critical, is how we better shape the world for future generations, and that needs shared knowledge and open dialogues such as we had today. Lastly, thank you again for participation. I wish great success of the Kyoto conference next Tuesday, and happy winter holidays to you all in good health. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ogawa, former president of Japan Political Association. Thank you.